Granddaughter was 7 years old when they wheeled her into emergency surgery, and her mother was on a yacht off the coast of St. Lucia, drinking champagne with her tennis coach. I am 68 years old. I have buried a wife, 2 business partners, and 1 brother. I thought the worst day of my life was already behind me. I was wrong. In the next 72 hours, I took everything that woman owned, everything she thought was hers, and I made her watch me do it from a holding cell with no shoelaces. My name is Holden Marchetti. I built a private logistics company out of a single warehouse in Newark in 1982. 41 years later, that warehouse is now 312 warehouses across 9 states. Before I tell you how I dismantled my daughter-in-law in less than 3 days, do me a favor. Like the video, subscribe to Frost Vengeance, and in the comments tell me what city you are watching from. I want to know how far a grandfather's reckoning can carry. The call came at 4:17 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I remember the time because I had just finished a meeting with my CFO about the Q3 numbers, and I was looking at my watch wondering if I had time for a sandwich before my next call. I will never forget what was on that watch. I have not worn it since. It was my son, Theo. He is 34. He runs the Pacific Northwest Division for me out of Tacoma. Strong man, calm voice, the kind of person who does not panic. Ever. When I heard him on the line, I almost did not recognize him. "Dad," he said. "It's Poppy. She fell. She fell off the 2nd-story balcony at the house. She isn't responding. They're taking her to Mary Bridge." I felt my legs go out from under me. I sat down on the corner of my desk. My assistant was standing in the doorway with a folder she was about to hand me, and I watched her face turn white as she saw mine. "Where are you?" I said. "Where is the mother?" He was quiet for too long. That silence is the silence I remember most from that whole nightmare. It was the silence of a son who already knew something was wrong, but did not have the energy to explain it. "She isn't here," he said. "She is in the Caribbean. She left Saturday." I did not say anything for a moment. Saturday was 3 days ago. Theo had been in Vancouver Saturday through Monday for the regional review I had asked him to run. That meant my granddaughter, my Poppy, my little girl with the gap in her teeth and the laugh she got from her grandmother, had been at home with what? With a babysitter. With a housekeeper. With nobody. Who was watching her, I asked. "The nanny," he said. "Camila. She has been with us 4 years. Dad, I have to go. The ambulance is here. I have to go." "I am coming," I said. "I am leaving right now." I had my jet wheels up out of Teterboro in 51 minutes. That is not me bragging. That is me telling you what fatherhood costs. I have a Gulfstream because I lost too many family events sitting in airport lounges in the 1990s, and I promised myself I would never miss another one. That plane has carried me to 2 graduations, 1 wedding, and 4 funerals. That night it carried me to the worst conversation of my life. I called Theo twice from the air. He did not answer. The second time he sent me a text that said only, "Surgery, 4 hours minimum. Don't call." I stared at that text for a long time. My son does not use abbreviations. My son does not skip punctuation. My son was sitting in a hallway somewhere, watching his only child get her skull put back together, and he could not write a full sentence. I tried his wife next. I tried her 3 times. Now let me tell you about her. Her name is Sloan. I want you to remember that name, because by the end of this story, I want you to spit it when you say it. She married my son 4.5 years ago in a ceremony I paid for at a vineyard in Sonoma that cost me $86,000. She wore a Vera Wang dress I bought. She drank crystal I bought. She gave a toast about how she had never felt safer than she did in the arms of the Marchetti family. I remember thinking at the time that it was a strange phrasing. Safe, not loved, not happy. Safe. Like a person climbing onto a lifeboat. Sloan was Theo's second wife. The first one, Emma, was Poppy's biological mother. Emma died of an aggressive form of breast cancer when Poppy was 3. Theo was destroyed. I had never seen him like that in my life. I sat with him in his living room for 2 weeks straight after the funeral. and I watched him try to figure out how to get out of bed in the morning for his daughter. He met Sloane 11 months later at a charity gala I sponsored. She was working the room. She told him she had lost her own mother young, that she understood his pain, that Poppy needed a mother figure. I should have seen it then. I am a man who has watched human beings try to extract money from me for 40 years. I know the look, but I had a son who was dying inside of grief, and I had a granddaughter who needed a woman in the house, and I let myself want to believe. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Her voicemail greeting was a little sing-song thing. Hi, you've reached Sloane Marchetti. Leave a message at the beep and have a beautiful day. A beautiful day. My granddaughter was in surgery for a fractured skull and an internal bleed, and her stepmother's voicemail told me to have a beautiful day. I called my head of corporate security, a man named Dean Fairlin. Dean was a diplomatic security service agent for 22 years before he came to work for me. He answers his phone on the first ring no matter what time it is. I told him what had happened. I told him Sloane was supposedly in the Caribbean. I told him I wanted to know exactly where she was within the hour. I did not ask him to do it. I told him. There is a difference. 28 minutes later, Dean called me back. She is on a charter yacht out of Rodney Bay Marina in St. Lucia, he said. The boat is called the Mariposa. It is a 122-foot Sunseeker, 4 cabins, full crew. She boarded Saturday afternoon. She is not alone. Who? I said. A man named Renzo Castellaro, Italian national, 31 years old. Listed on her phone as her tennis instructor at the country club in Tacoma. He has been her instructor for 2 years. I closed my eyes. I felt my pulse in my temples. How sure are you? I said. I have credit card records, flight manifests, and a photograph the marina took of them boarding. He is wearing her husband's wristwatch. I want to pause here. I want to tell you what I felt at that moment, because I think it matters. I did not feel rage. Rage is for amateurs. I did not feel grief. Grief comes later, when you have time to sit down. What I felt was a kind of stillness. The kind of stillness you feel right before you make a decision you cannot take back. I've made 3 of those decisions in my life. The first one was leaving a stable job at a freight company in 1981 to start my own thing with $22,000 I had borrowed against my parents' house. The second one was when I caught my second-in-command in 1997 selling client manifests to a competitor, and I did not just fire him. I made sure he never worked in logistics again. The third one was when my wife was diagnosed, and I shut the company down to her bedside for 9 weeks. This was the fourth. Dean, I said, I want you to put a team on her. I want eyes on the boat. I want to know if she sneezes. And I want you to start pulling every record on her you can legally pull. Bank statements, phone records, every credit card she has used in the last 24 months. Find me her lawyer if she has one. Find me her therapist if she has one. Find me everything. Already in motion, he said. I called my personal attorney next. Her name is Margulis Chenoweth. She has been my attorney since 1994. She is 71 years old, and she could chew up a Manhattan litigator and floss with their tie. I told her what I knew. I told her what I wanted. How fast, she said. By the time her boat reaches port, I said. She laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Holden, you old wolf, give me until Friday. It was Tuesday night. We landed in Tacoma at 10:42 p.m. Pacific. I went straight to the hospital. Theo was sitting in a waiting room in the pediatric ICU wing. He had not changed clothes. There was dried blood on his sleeve, and I did not ask whose. There was dried blood on his sleeve, and I did not ask whose. He stood up when he saw me, and we did not say anything. I just held him. My son, my 34-year-old son, with a beard he had stopped trimming and shoulders that had carried this family since his mother died, put his head on my collarbone and shook. The neurosurgeon came out at 11:30. Poppy had a depressed skull fracture, a small subdural hematoma, and a broken collarbone. The surgery had gone well. She was in a medically induced coma to let the swelling go down. They would try to wake her in 48 to 72 hours. The doctor said the words, guarded but optimistic. That is doctor language for, I am not promising you anything. I went into the room. Poppy was so small in that bed. Her hair had been shaved on one side and there was a bandage that wrapped around her head like a turban. She had a tube in her mouth and her hands were folded on top of the blanket, like somebody had arranged them that way. She had a bracelet on her wrist that I had given her for her 7th birthday. It was a thin gold chain with a charm shaped like a hummingbird. She had wanted a hummingbird because her grandmother used to grow trumpet vines in the backyard to bring them in. And I had told her that her grandmother used to call her my little hummingbird before she was even born. I sat down next to her bed. Theo went to get coffee. I held her tiny hand, and I made her a promise. The woman who left you alone, I said. I am going to take everything she ever wanted, and I am going to make her watch. I went out to the hallway to make calls. The nanny, Camila, had been let go on Saturday morning. Sloane had told her she was no longer needed for the week because Theo's mother was coming to stay. There is no Theo's mother. Theo's mother is buried in a cemetery in New Jersey next to a magnolia tree I planted in 2009. Camila had taken the week to visit her sister in Yakima. She had no reason to doubt the story. She is a kind woman who loved Poppy, and she had been calling Theo's phone every 20 minutes since she heard. Poppy had been alone in the house from Saturday morning until Tuesday afternoon. She had been alone for 72 hours. She had eaten cereal and microwave chicken nuggets. She had been watching cartoons in the upstairs media room when she went out onto the balcony to wave at a neighbor's dog, and the railing gave way. I am going to say that again, so it sits with you. The railing gave way. Theo had been complaining about that railing for months. He had asked Sloane to call the contractor twice. She had said she would handle it. He came home in March and found a contractor's truck in the driveway, and Sloane said it was being fixed. I called Dean. Find me whoever was at that house in March, I said. Find me the receipt. Find me the work order. I want to know if that railing was ever actually repaired. On it, he said. It was 2014 a.m. I had not slept. I went down to the lobby of the hospital and stood outside in the cold, and I called Margolis. I want a divorce filed on Theo's behalf at 9 a.m., I said. Adultery and abandonment of a minor. I want a full asset freeze on every joint account. I want her name off the deed to the house in Tacoma. I want her car repossessed. I want her credit cards canceled. I want her removed as the beneficiary on every policy. And I want the police involved. Police on what charge? Margolis said. Child endangerment at minimum, I said. She left a 7-year-old child alone in a house for 3 days. There's a railing in that house that may or may not have been deliberately not fixed. We do not yet know what we are looking at. But I want it on record that we asked the question. Margolis was quiet for a moment. Holden, she said, if that railing was tampered with. I know, I said. You need to be careful, she said. Don't say it out loud yet. Let the investigators say it. She was right. She is always right. That is why I pay her what I pay her. I went back upstairs. Theo was asleep in a chair next to Poppy's bed with his hand still in hers. I covered him with my coat. I sat down on the other side and I started making lists on a yellow legal pad I had borrowed from the nurse's station. By morning, I had a plan. It had 9 parts. By Friday, she would not have a single dollar she could access, a single asset she could sell, a single friend who would return her calls, or a single lawyer in the state of Washington willing to represent her without a retainer she could not pay. I do not say that to brag. I say that to tell you what is possible when a man has 41 years of relationships in a tri-state area and a daughter-in-law who picked the wrong family to take from. At 7:30 a.m., Dean called. The contractor in March was not a contractor, he said. I closed my eyes. He was her tennis instructor, Dean said. Renzo Castellero. The truck in the driveway was rented from Home Depot. There is no permit on file. There is no work order. There is no receipt. There is also no actual repair. I opened my eyes. I want you to confirm that, I said. I want a structural engineer at that house by noon. Already booked, he said. Send everything to Margolis the moment it lands. Yes. I hung up. I went to find Theo. He was awake now, drinking coffee out of a paper cup, staring at his daughter. I sat down across from him. Son, I said, I need to tell you some things, and I need you to listen to me without interrupting. He looked at me. There was something in his eyes that told me he already half knew. A husband knows. Even when he refuses to admit he knows, he knows. I told him everything. The Caribbean, the boat, the tennis instructor, the 2-year affair, the fake repair, the lie about his mother. I watched my son's face go through every color a face can go through, and at the end of it he did not say anything. He just turned and looked at his daughter, and his jaw worked in a way I had not seen since the morning of Emma's funeral. What do you want to do? I said. I will follow whatever you decide. But I want you to know I have options ready. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I want her to lose everything before they put her in handcuffs. I want her to know. I nodded. Then that is what we are going to do. By 10 a.m., the divorce was filed. By 11 a.m., the asset freeze was in motion. By noon, the structural engineer was in my son's house in Tacoma taking photographs of a balcony railing that had not been touched by a licensed contractor in 18 years. By 2 p.m., Slowing's joint accounts with my son were frozen. By 3 p.m., the leased Range Rover she drove was reported recovered from the long-term lot at SeaTac. By 4 p.m., every credit card she had a name on was either canceled or maxed by automated holds. By 5 p.m., the house in Tacoma had been redeeded into a trust she had never been named in, a trust I had set up for Poppy 2 years ago, without my son even knowing I had done it. I do that kind of thing for my grandchildren. It is the closest I will ever come to immortality. By 6 p.m., Tacoma PD opened a child endangerment investigation. By 7 p.m., the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office had a copy of the engineer's preliminary report stating that the balcony railing showed signs of having been deliberately loosened. 2 of the 4 anchoring bolts had been removed and replaced with shorter bolts that were not load-bearing. I want you to read that again. 2 of the 4 anchoring bolts had been removed and replaced with shorter bolts that were not load-bearing. That balcony was not designed to fall for an adult. An adult would have leaned against it and probably felt it move and stepped back. That balcony was designed to fall for a child. A small body, light enough to not trigger the warning of a wobble. A small body leaning over to wave at a dog. My granddaughter was supposed to die. I sat in that hospital chair and I felt something inside me that I am going to do my best to describe to you, even though I do not think there are words for it. It was the feeling of every soft thing in a man being burned out of him in 1 second and replaced with something cold and clean and patient. I was not going to scream. I was not going to make a scene. I was going to sit very quietly and let the entire architecture of this woman's life come down on top of her like a building. Wednesday morning, Sloan tried to use her American Express. She was at a beachfront restaurant in Rodney Bay. The card was declined. Dean had a man at the next table. He sent me a photograph. She laughed it off and used a different card. That one was declined too. Her third card was declined. She tried to call the bank. The bank told her the accounts had been frozen, pending an investigation she was not entitled to receive details about. She called her husband. Her husband did not pick up. She called her father-in-law. I did not pick up either. By Wednesday afternoon, she was trying to charge things to the yacht. The yacht charter company had been paid in full in advance, but extras like spa services and excursions and bottle service are billed at the end. They told her she would need to settle the account before disembarking. She had $11.42 in her checking account, and a frozen savings account she could not access, and a husband who would not answer the phone. By Wednesday evening, Renzo got nervous. He started making calls. He was trying to charter a different boat. He was trying to get to Martinique. He was trying to get to anywhere that was not where she was. Dean had a man on Renzo too. Renzo got on a flight Thursday morning out of Huanora to Miami, alone. He did not tell her he was leaving. He left a note in the cabin that I have a photograph of. It said, "I can't get involved in this. Sorry." He signed it with a heart. A heart. That is the kind of man she chose over my son. Thursday morning, Sloan called Theo 18 times. He did not pick up. She left voicemails that started in a sweet, pleading voice and ended in screaming. She called me 12 times. I did not pick up either. She called Camila. Camila hung up on her. She called her own mother in Phoenix. Her mother's number had been disconnected at her mother's request, after a phone call from Margolis that I do not know the contents of and have not asked. Margolis is very good at her job. Thursday afternoon, Sloan was escorted off the yacht by St. Lucian police for non-payment. Her luggage was held by the charter company. She had her passport, her phone, and a sundress. She tried to check into a hotel. Her cards were all declined. She tried to bribe the front desk clerk. The front desk clerk smiled and said no. I had Dean send a small donation to the clerk's church. She spent Thursday night in the lobby of the airport. She slept on a bench. She tried to use the free Wi-Fi to email her tennis instructor. He did not respond. She emailed an old friend in Tacoma. The old friend, who had bought a Porsche the year before with money she did not have, owed me a favor from a contract dispute I helped her out of. The old friend did not respond. I am not a kind man when my family is threatened. I want you to understand that. I want you to understand that. I am a perfectly civil neighbor. I am a generous donor. I am a fair employer. I am a soft grandfather. But when somebody comes from my blood, I do not call God. I do not call therapy. I call a list of people who owe me a favor, and I begin a quiet and methodical and entirely legal destruction of the person who came for my blood. Friday morning, Margolis got me on a call with the prosecutor's office. They were ready to issue a warrant. Child endangerment with reckless disregard for life. Aggravated, combined with what was now an open assault investigation into the balcony tampering, which would almost certainly be upgraded once the lab results on the bolts came back. The lab results would show tool marks. Tool marks would tie to a specific brand of cordless drill. That brand of cordless drill, Dean had confirmed by Friday afternoon, was the same one Sloan had bought at Home Depot in Lakewood on March 11th on the only credit card of hers that had not yet been canceled, the one her husband did not know about. She bought the drill herself. She did the work herself. She had her boyfriend stand by the truck so the neighbors would think a man was doing it. She loosened the bolts on her own stepdaughter's balcony. Friday afternoon, Poppy's swelling had gone down enough that the doctors began to bring her out of the coma. It was a slow process. She was groggy for an hour. Then she opened her eyes. Then she said one word, "Daddy." I do not have any way to tell you what that was like to hear. I am going to leave it at that. Friday evening, the warrant for Sloan's arrest was transmitted to St. Lucian authorities through an emergency consular request. By that time, Sloan had managed to convince a security guard at the airport to let her into a back office to use a phone. She called her lawyer in Tacoma. Her lawyer told her his retainer had been pulled. He could not represent her further. She called a second lawyer. He had heard about the case. He declined to take it. She called a third lawyer. He laughed. She started sobbing in the back office. The guard escorted her out. Saturday morning, I flew to St. Lucia myself. I want to tell you why. Because I needed her to see my face. I needed her to look me in the eye and know that the storm she was standing in had a name on it. And that name was mine. I arrived at 11:30 a.m. local time. Dean was already on the ground. He drove me to the police station in Vieux Fort. They had picked her up at 7 a.m. She was being held in a small concrete room with a single bench and a slow fan. They let me see her through the bars before the extradition paperwork was finalized. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was matted. She had on the same sundress from Thursday, and she was barefoot. They had taken her sandals because of some procedural thing I did not ask about. When she saw me, her face crumpled, and she ran to the bars. "Dad," she said. "Holden, please, please. I don't know what's happening. There has been a mistake. I love Poppy. I love her like she was my own. I would never, please." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had spent 4 years sitting at my dinner table, drinking my wine, kissing my son in front of me, holding my granddaughter on her lap. "I have a photograph," I said, "of the receipt. From Home Depot. For the drill. The cordless 18-volt with the green stripe." Her face did the thing. The thing with a lie underneath. The lie, only live, all collapses at once into the same flat, blank face. She did not even try. "He made me," she whispered. "Renzo made me do it. He told me if I didn't, he would tell Theo about us, and Theo would take everything, and I would have nothing. He said the only way out was, he said, Renzo, I said, is in Miami. He left you a note with a heart on it." She slid down the bars to the floor. "You took everything," she said. "Everything. I have nothing." "You did that," I said. I just made sure the lights were on when it happened. I crouched down so I was on her level. I did this because I wanted her close enough to hear me without me raising my voice. "You wanted my granddaughter dead," I said, "because you thought my son would inherit a trust that you would then take from him in a divorce. You did not know that the trust is not in my son's name. You did not know that the trust is in Poppy's name. If she had died, you would have inherited nothing. $16 million would have gone to a children's hospital in Seattle in her name. You did this for nothing. You killed a railing for nothing. You spread your legs for a man who left you a note with a heart for nothing. You are not just a monster. You are a bad investor." She made a sound I am not going to repeat. It was not a human sound. I stood up. "I am going home now," I said. "My granddaughter just woke up. She is going to want her grandfather. She is not going to ask about you. Not today. Not ever. I am going to make sure of that." I turned around and I walked out. She was extradited 2 weeks later. The case is still pending. The DA in Pierce County is going for attempted murder of a child, and given what the bolts looked like under a microscope, and given the Home Depot footage, and given Renzo Castellaro turning state's witness in Miami in exchange for a reduced charge of being an accessory, she is looking at 25 to life. Renzo is looking at 8 to 10. Her mother in Phoenix changed her phone number again. Her old friends do not return her letters. The public defender she has been assigned is a kid 3 years out of law school who keeps asking for continuances. Poppy is home. She has nightmares. She does not remember the fall, but she remembers waking up in the hospital, and she remembers asking where her stepmother was, and her father telling her that her stepmother was gone, and her stepmother was not coming back, and that she was safe, and that she was loved, and that nothing like this would ever happen to her again. Theo told her that, and he meant it, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure it stays true. We took down the balcony, the whole thing. We had it removed, and the wall bricked over. Theo wanted to sell the house. I told him no. I told him not to let the woman who tried to take this family from him take the house too. We renovated. We made it a different house. Poppy's room is now a corner room on the first floor, with a window seat that looks out at a hummingbird feeder. She named the bird that comes most often Stella. I do not know why. Children just name things. Theo started therapy. He is doing better than I expected, and worse than he pretends. That will take time. I see him every other weekend. We do not talk about her unless he brings it up first. He brought her up once, 2 months in, sitting on my back porch in the dark, drinking a beer. He said, "Dad, how did you know? How did you know to move that fast?" I told him the truth. I said, "Son, I have spent 40 years watching people try to take things from me. You learn the shape of it. You learn the smell of it. The minute Dean said she was on a yacht, I knew. The minute I heard the railing had been fixed by somebody who was not a contractor, I knew. I did not have to think. I just had to move. He nodded. He drank his beer. After a while, he said, "I should have seen it." "No," I said. "She was good. She was patient. She married a grieving man and she waited 5 years. You should not have to see that in your own house from the woman who tucked your daughter in at night. There is no version of being a good man where you see that coming." He started crying. My 34-year-old son. I sat there on my back porch with my arm around him, and I let him cry until he was done. That is what fathers are for. I want to tell you a few more things before I let you go. There are people in your life who are not what they seem. There are people who walked into your life through a door you opened at a moment of grief or weakness or loneliness, and they have been quietly mapping the floor plan ever since. I am not telling you this to make you paranoid. I am telling you this to make you observant. Watch what people do, not what they say. Watch how they treat the people who cannot do anything for them. Watch how they behave when they think nobody important is in the room. Pay attention to the small lies. The small lies are the survey marks for the big lies that come later. If you are a grandparent and you have a feeling about somebody in your family, do not bury it. Do not tell yourself you are being judgmental. Do not tell yourself it is none of your business. Family is your business. The little ones are your business. If something feels wrong, sit with it. Ask why questions. Look at bank statements when you have the chance. Look at the railing. Look at the railing. And if somebody comes for your blood, do not threaten them. Do not yell at them. Do not give them the gift of knowing you are coming. Be quiet. Be patient. Document everything. Call the people who love you and the people who owe you and build your case in the dark. And when the case is finished, when every door is closed and every account is frozen and every friend is gone, then you walk in and you let them see your face. Once. Just once. For the record, my name is Holden Marchetti. My granddaughter is alive. She turns 8 next month. We are taking her to see hummingbirds in Arizona. She does not know yet. It is going to be a surprise. If you have made it this far, hit that like button. Subscribe to Frost Vengeance. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? And what would you have done if it had been your grandchild on that balcony? I will read everyone. Stay watchful. Stay close to your people. And never, ever, ignore the railing. I have been turning this story over in my head every night since it happened, and I have come to believe that what looks like fate is almost always just arithmetic. Sloane did not stumble into a cell and view a fort barefoot, because the universe spun a wheel. She walked there one small choice at a time. 2 loose bolts in March. A lie about a contractor. A Saturday she chose a yacht over a child. Every one of those was a seed, and seeds grow into exactly what you plant. I did not bring a storm down on her. She planted it herself, and I just made sure she was standing under it when the sky finally opened. I think a lot about what I could have seen earlier. The truth is, I felt something off about that woman the first time she called me Dad at her own wedding. I did not act on it. I told myself I was being a hard old man. I told myself my son deserved his happiness. And for that silence, my granddaughter almost paid with her life. I will carry that the rest of my days. Decency is not just being a kind grandfather at Thanksgiving. Decency is having the courage to ask the uncomfortable question while the answer still matters. If I have learned anything in 68 years, it is this. A good life is built on 3 legs, and if any one of them is missing, the chair will not hold you when you need to sit down. The first leg is your character. You do not get to choose what people do to you, but you absolutely choose what you do back, and how you do it, and whether you can still look at yourself in the mirror on the other side of it. I did not scream at Sloane. I did not lay a hand on her. Everything I did to her was lawful, documented, and finished in daylight. That mattered to me. The second leg is your mind. Pay attention. Look at the receipts. Look at the receipts. Look at the railing. Notice the small lies before they grow teeth. The world will tell you that being suspicious is being cynical, and that is a story sold mostly by people who benefit from your not looking too closely. Watch what people do when they think nobody is watching. That is who they are. The third leg is your nerve. When the moment finally comes, and it will come, you cannot freeze. You cannot wait for somebody else to fix it. My granddaughter is alive today because I made 9 phone calls in the first hour, and not one of them was to ask for permission. Raise children and grandchildren who know how to move. Be the person in your own family who can be called at 3 in the morning and will already be putting their shoes on by the second sentence. That is the inheritance worth leaving. Not the money, not the warehouses. The willingness to stand up on the worst day of someone you love and not sit back down until the job is done.